I never expected my 59th year to begin with such dangerous territory. The community theater's red velvet seats felt worn beneath my fingers as I settled in for what promised to be another pretentious experimental performance. Chandler's art scene had grown stale, but tonight something electric crackled in the air. The lights dimmed, and I noticed her immediately. Blonde hair caught the stage glow 3 rows ahead. And when she turned, slightly, those blue eyes reflected something I hadn't seen in years. Hunger. Not for food or fame, but for art, for meaning, for something real in this desert town that bred conformity. The performance itself was abstract nonsense. Actors writhing around geometric shapes while ambient music droned. But I found myself watching her reactions instead of the stage. She leaned forward during the intense moments, her lips parting slightly in concentration. When the protagonist screamed into the void, she actually winced. Intermission arrived with jarring house lights. She stood, stretching gracefully, and I made a decision that would change everything. Fascinating interpretation of isolation, wasn't it? I approached from behind, my voice steadier than my heartbeat. She turned, and damn if those eyes weren't even more striking up close. You think? I thought it was about rebirth, actually. Taylor Barnes. She extended her hand and I felt calluses that spoke of real work. Scarlett Reed. And you might be right about the rebirth. We talked through the entire intermission, her passion for the abstract matching my own need for deeper meaning. She worked with essential oils, crafting scent profiles like I wove patterns into fabric, both of us creating beauty from raw materials. Coffee tomorrow? She asked, as the lights dimmed again. I know a place. The second act became irrelevant. I kept stealing glances at her profile, wondering what kind of foolishness I was inviting into my carefully ordered existence. At my age, attraction felt like a luxury I couldn't afford, but Taylor Barnes made me remember what it meant to feel alive. After the final curtain, she waited for me in the lobby. That coffee invitation still stands? I said, surprising myself with my boldness. I was hoping you'd ask again. We walked to my car in comfortable silence, autumn air crisp against our faces. I drove her to the small cafe near my studio, the one with mismatched chairs and terrible lighting that somehow made everything more honest. Over steaming mugs, she told me about growing up in small-town Oregon, learning aromatherapy from her grandmother. I shared pieces of my textile journey, the years spent perfecting techniques that most people considered obsolete. You create things that last, she said, stirring honey into her coffee. My work evaporates. But it affects people in the moment. That matters too. Her smile transformed her entire face. 31 years old and brilliant. Sitting across from someone who could be her mother, yet treating me like an equal, like someone worth knowing. I should go, she said finally, though neither of us moved. Yes, you probably should. But when I walked her to her car, and she turned to say goodnight, the space between us hummed with possibility. She stepped closer, close enough that I caught her scent, something like jasmine and rain. Scarlett? Yes? I'd like to see your studio sometime. I'd like that too. She drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot wondering what the hell I thought I was doing. But as I watched her taillights disappear into the desert night, I realized I didn't care about the answer. 3 days after the theater encounter, Taylor knocked on my studio door at exactly 10 in the morning. I'd spent the previous night reorganizing wool samples that didn't need organizing, trying to convince myself this was just professional curiosity. Holy shit, she breathed, stepping into my workspace. The converted garage held decades of my life's work. Looms of varying sizes lined the walls, their frames holding half-finished pieces in jewel tones. Skeins of wool hung from ceiling hooks like colorful rain, organized by shade and texture. The morning light streaming through skylights made everything glow. How long does one piece take? She asked, running fingertips along a nearly completed wall hanging. Depends on complexity. This one, maybe 6 months. 6 months of your life in every thread. She understood. Most people saw pretty fabric, but Taylor recognized the devotion required. She moved through my space like she belonged there, asking intelligent questions about techniques I'd spent 40 years perfecting. Your turn, I said. Show me your world. Her workshop occupied the back half of a small house across town. The moment she opened the door, I was transported. Hundreds of small glass bottles lined shelves, each labeled in precise handwriting. The air itself held layers of fragrance, complex and shifting. "Careful where you breathe," she laughed. "Some combinations can be overwhelming." She demonstrated her blending process, measuring drops with scientific precision. Bergamot, sandalwood, something floral I couldn't identify. Her hands moved with the same reverence I felt when working wool, each ingredient chosen with purpose. "Try this." She held a small vial under my nose. The scent hit me like memory made tangible. Summer evenings, possibility, the way desire feels just before you acknowledge it. My eyes met hers over the bottle, and something shifted between us. "What do you call it?" "I haven't named it yet. It smells like secrets." Her laugh was softer now, more intimate. Maybe that's exactly what it is. We spent the afternoon there, her teaching me about scent profiles while I explained how different wool textures affected light and shadow. By the time hunger forced us to consider dinner, the professional pretense had dissolved completely. "There's a small place downtown," I suggested. "Nothing fancy." The restaurant was dimly lit, with candles flickering on checkered tablecloths. We chose a corner booth, sliding in perhaps closer than necessary. Over wine and pasta, the conversation flowed from art to philosophy to stories we'd never shared with anyone. "I've never been with someone your age," she admitted, swirling her glass. "I've never been with someone your gender," I replied, surprising us both. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy with implication. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. "Are we really doing this?" she asked. Before I could answer, before doubt could creep in, I leaned forward and kissed her. Soft, tentative at first, then deeper as she responded. The taste of wine on her lips, the warmth of her breath, the dangerous thrill of doing something completely outside my controlled existence. When we broke apart, her eyes held the same wonder I felt. "My place isn't far," she whispered. "We should probably talk about this first." "Probably." But her thumb traced circles on my palm. "Do you want to talk about it?" I looked at this beautiful, intelligent woman who made me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible. At 59, I'd built a life of carefully managed routines and safe choices. Taylor represented chaos, unpredictability, everything I'd learned to avoid. "No," I said finally, "I really don't." The drive to her house felt like crossing into foreign territory. She held my hand over the center console, her touch grounding me even as my mind raced with possibilities and fears. Standing in her living room, surrounded by the lingering scents from her workshop, we faced each other across an invisible line. Once crossed, there would be no pretending this was just friendship or professional interest. "Scarlett?" "I'm terrified," I admitted. "Good." She smiled. "So am I." When she kissed me again, all the reasons this was complicated melted away. There was only her softness, her certainty, and the shocking realization that I'd been holding my breath for decades without knowing it. Saturday morning arrived with desert sunshine streaming through Taylor's bedroom windows. I woke to the unfamiliar sensation of another body beside me, her blonde hair spread across the pillow like spilled light. At 59, I thought I knew all the ways my heart could surprise me. I was wrong. "Coffee?" she murmured without opening her eyes. "Please." Moving through her kitchen felt both foreign and natural. She appeared wearing an oversized shirt that barely covered her thighs. And damn if that didn't make my pulse quicken all over again. "Farmer's market?" she suggested over steaming mugs. "I need fresh lavender for a new blend." The market buzzed with Saturday energy, couples and families wandering between stalls of produce and crafts. Taylor slipped her hand into mine as we walked, the gesture so casual I almost forgot to panic. Until I saw Janet Hoffman from my neighborhood examining heirloom tomatoes 2 stalls down. Taylor felt me tense. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just someone I know." But Taylor's grip tightened, and when Janet looked our way with obvious curiosity, Taylor stepped closer and kissed my cheek. Soft, claiming, completely public. My face burned with a mixture of pride and terror. "Relax," Taylor whispered. "Let them wonder." We spent the morning collecting ingredients for her work and samples of handspun wool for mine. Her enthusiasm for everything, from purple carrots to a vendor's rescue dog, made the world feel more vivid. When she haggled over lavender prices, I found myself studying her profile, memorizing the way concentration narrowed her eyes. Back at my house, she insisted on helping with lunch. My kitchen wasn't designed for two people, forcing us to navigate around each other in a dance that felt increasingly intimate. When she reached for olive oil from the high shelf, her body pressed against my back, and I forgot what I was supposed to be doing. "Scarlett?" Her voice was different, deeper. I turned in the circle of her arms, and the hunger in her eyes mirrored my own. She guided me backwards until I felt the counter against my spine, then kissed me with an urgency that made my knees weak. "Bedroom," I managed against her mouth. "Here's fine." Her hands found the hem of my blouse, lifting it over my head with reverent slowness. The afternoon light painted geometric patterns across her skin as she knelt between my legs, her touch both gentle and insistent. When she looked up at me, blue eyes dark with desire, I forgot every reason this was complicated. Time became fluid, measured in sighs and whispered encouragements. She worshipped my body with a patience I hadn't expected, as if mapping every inch was essential to her understanding of me. When release finally claimed me, I cried out her name like a prayer, my fingers tangled in her hair. Afterwards, we lay tangled on my living room rug, sharing lazy kisses and secrets whispered against skin. The rational part of my mind cataloged all the reasons this couldn't work: the age difference, the small-town scrutiny, the fact that I'd never been with a woman before. But with Taylor tracing patterns along my collarbone, reality felt negotiable. "What happens now?" she asked eventually. "I don't know." Honesty felt safer than false promises. I've never done anything like this before. The sex? Or the relationship? Either. Both. I studied the ceiling, avoiding her gaze. I was married for 20 years. Very conventional, very safe. What happened? He died. Cancer. 5 years ago. Her fingers stilled against my skin. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." "We were good companions, but this, what I feel with you, it's completely different." She propped herself up on one elbow, studying my face with uncomfortable intensity. "Different how?" "Alive. Dangerous. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and wanting to jump. And that scares you." "Terrifies me." Taylor smiled, the expression both tender and mischievous. "Good. Safe is overrated anyway." She kissed me again, slow and thorough, until my fears dissolved into want. When she suggested dinner, I could barely focus on food. Instead, I found myself watching her mouth as she talked, remembering how it felt against my skin. "You're staring," she said, amused. "Yes." "What are you thinking?" "That I'm in serious trouble." Her laugh was rich, unguarded, the best kind of trouble. Later, as she prepared to leave, we stood at my front door like teenagers reluctant to end a first date. The desert evening painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, and I realized I'd never noticed how beautiful my neighborhood could be. "Dinner tomorrow?" she asked. "My place?" "I'd like that." She kissed me goodnight, soft and sweet, then walked to her car with a confidence I envied. Watching her drive away, I understood that my carefully ordered existence had just been completely upended. And surprisingly, I couldn't bring myself to care. 3 weeks into whatever we were calling this, Taylor knocked on my studio door with an enormous grin and coffee for both of us. We'd fallen into a rhythm of shared mornings, her scent blends inspiring new color combinations. In my work, while my textures sparked ideas for her aromatherapy projects. "I have an idea," she announced, settling cross-legged on my work rug. "What if we collaborated? Scented textiles for the gallery downtown?" The concept was brilliant. Essential oils infused into wool fabric, creating pieces that engaged multiple senses simultaneously. I'd been working in textiles for 40 years and never considered adding fragrance as a design element. "Show me," I said. She pulled out small vials of different oils, explaining how certain scents complemented specific colors. Lavender with deep purples, citrus with sunny yellows. As she demonstrated application techniques, her enthusiasm became infectious. "We could create an entire installation," I suggested, warming to the idea. "Different stations, each piece telling part of a story through sight and scent." We spent the morning sketching concepts, her hand occasionally brushing mine as we reached for the same pencil. The creative energy between us felt as intoxicating as our physical connection. Two minds building something neither could achieve alone. Days blurred into intense collaboration. My studio became our shared workspace, looms and oil stations existing in organized chaos. The gallery director loved our proposal, offering us a December showing that seemed impossibly soon, yet perfectly timed. Thanksgiving menu planning, Taylor announced one evening, curled beside me on my couch. "I'm cooking for you. You don't have to do that." "I want to." "When did you last have a real Thanksgiving dinner?" I couldn't remember. Since David died, holidays had become endurance tests, something to survive rather than celebrate. The idea of sharing the day with Taylor felt both wonderful and terrifying. Thursday arrived crisp and clear, unusual for Chandler's desert climate. Taylor appeared at dawn with grocery bags and an apron that read, "Kiss the cook," which I did thoroughly before she could object. Watching her work in my kitchen was mesmerizing. She moved with the same precision she brought to oil blending, seasoning from instinct rather than recipes. I helped where she'd let me, mostly standing too close and stealing tastes when she wasn't watching. "Tell me about your family," she said, basting the turkey with movements that seemed unnecessarily sensual. "Not much to tell. Parents died young, no siblings. David and I never had children." The familiar pang of regret accompanied that admission. "What about yours?" "Oregon hippies who think I'm living in sin in Arizona." Her laugh held an edge. "They're not wrong about the sin part." "Do they know about us?" "They know I'm seeing someone. They don't know you're a woman, or 59, or that you make me happier than I've ever been." The casual declaration stopped my breath. We'd been careful not to define what was happening between us, but happiness was exactly what I felt too. Dangerous, unexpected happiness that made me want to throw caution away completely. "Taylor? She was checking sweet potatoes now, bent over the oven in ways that made concentration impossible. "Come here." She straightened, wiping her hands on the dish rag, and walked into my arms. Kissing her still felt like a small miracle, the way she melted against me, her soft sounds of pleasure, the taste of vanilla on her tongue from testing pie filling. "Food's going to burn," she murmured against my mouth. "Let it." But she pulled away with a grin, returning to her cooking while I watched from the counter, completely besotted. At 59, I'd thought passion was something for younger people, a luxury I'd outgrown. Taylor proved me spectacularly wrong. Dinner was perfect. Roasted turkey with herbs from her garden, stuffing that tasted like childhood, memories I'd never had, wine that made everything glow warmer. We ate by candlelight, talking about art and dreams, and the installation taking shape in my studio. "What are you grateful for?" she asked as we cleared plates. "This. You. The fact that I'm brave enough to want something I never expected." Her smile could have lit the room. "Me too." Later, full and wine-drowsy, we moved to the patio. The desert night was clear enough to see stars, rare for our light-polluted suburb. Taylor curled against my side on the outdoor couch, her head on my shoulder. "I'm falling in love with you," she said quietly. The words hung in the desert air like a challenge to the universe. I could deflect, make a joke, protect myself from the vulnerability of admitting the same. Instead, I tilted her chin up until our eyes met. "I'm already there." When she kissed me this time, it felt like sealing a pact. Whatever complications lay ahead, whatever obstacles our age difference or small-town gossip might create, we were choosing this, choosing each other. The kiss deepened, 28 years between our ages disappearing in the heat building between us. Her hands found the buttons of my blouse while mine explored the familiar territory of her curves. Under the canopy of desert stars, we made love with a tenderness that felt like worship, like gratitude, like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. "Stay tonight," I whispered afterwards, both of us disheveled and breathless. "I was hoping you'd ask." As we gathered our scattered clothes, I caught her watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" "Just memorizing this moment, in case I'm dreaming." "If you are, don't wake up." The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning in December, official county, seal glaring up at me from between utility bills and holiday catalogs. Jury duty. My hands shook as I read the details. State versus Martinez, murder trial, expected duration 3 to 4 weeks with full sequestration. No, I whispered to my empty kitchen. Not now. Taylor found me an hour later, still staring at the summons like it might disappear through sheer willpower. Our gallery opening was just 2 weeks away, our installation finally taking shape after months of meticulous work. Can you get out of it? She asked, reading over my shoulder. I tried. Medical exemption denied, age exemption denied. Financial hardship because of the gallery show, also denied. The courthouse clerk had been unsympathetic to my pleas. Civic duty, she'd said, as if those words could fix the disaster about to unfold. Our scented textile pieces hung half-finished in my studio, waiting for the final touches that would now have to wait indefinitely. We'll figure it out, Taylor said, but her voice carried doubt. Maybe they won't select you. 3 days later, I sat in a sterile courtroom while lawyers asked probing questions about my ability to remain impartial. They seemed particularly interested in my relationship status, which I answered with careful truths. Yes, I was in a committed relationship. No, I had no bias against the defendant based on his background. I was selected as juror number 7. The trial details were disturbing. A domestic violence case escalated to murder, with forensic evidence and witness testimony that would haunt my sleep for weeks. But the worst part was the sequestration order issued by the judge on day 2, after a potential witness received threats. No contact with family or friends, the bailiff explained, as we were moved to a downtown hotel. Supervised phone calls only, 30 minutes every other day. No internet, no social media, no news except what we provide. The hotel room was beige and soulless, with industrial carpet and fluorescent lighting that made everything look dead. I called Taylor from the lobby payphone, my hands trembling as I dialed. Scarlett? Thank God. How long? They don't know. Could be weeks. The words felt like swallowing glass. The gallery opening, all our work, I'm so sorry. Forget the show. I need you safe. But I heard the disappointment she tried to hide. The months of collaboration dissolving into uncertainty. We'd built something beautiful together, and I was about to watch it crumble from behind glass walls and legal restrictions. I have to go. The bailiff is watching. I love you, she said quickly. I love you too. The line went dead, leaving me standing in a hotel lobby that smelled like industrial cleaner and broken dreams. Around me, 11 other jurors checked in with their own families, their own interrupted lives. But none of them looked like they were losing the best thing that had ever happened to them. Days blurred into a routine of testimony, deliberation breaks, and supervised meals. The evidence was overwhelming, but the defense attorney was skilled, raising reasonable doubts that stretched proceedings into their second week. Every night I lay in the narrow hotel bed, staring at ceiling tiles and wondering if Taylor was beginning to resent the disruption I'd brought to her organized existence. The phone calls became lifelines and torture simultaneously. 30 minutes every other day to maintain connection with someone I'd only just learned to love. Taylor tried to sound optimistic, sharing updates about her essential oil business and asking careful questions about my well-being. The installation looks lonely without you, she said during our Thursday call. Is the gallery pushing to reschedule? They're being patient. But Scarlett, some of the more delicate pieces are starting to lose their scent profiles. My heart sank. Months of work, possibly ruining while I sat trapped in legal proceedings. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 5 years after David's death building a safe, predictable existence. The moment I'd chosen risk, chosen love, the universe had reminded me why safety mattered. Maybe you should finish the installation without me, I suggested. Absolutely not. We created this together. But doubt crept into her voice, and I recognized the sound. It was the same tone David had used when cancer treatments began affecting his personality, when love started feeling like obligation rather than choice. Week 3 brought closing arguments and the beginning of deliberations. The case seemed clear-cut, but 3 jurors remained unconvinced. Hour after hour we debated evidence, reviewed testimony, sought consensus that felt impossible to achieve. This is ridiculous, muttered juror number 4 during our 15th hour of discussion. The man killed his wife. The DNA evidence is conclusive. Intent matters, argued juror 9. If it was heat of passion versus premeditation, that changes everything. I found myself wondering if Taylor was spending evenings alone, if she'd begun questioning what she'd gotten herself into by loving someone whose life could be derailed by civic duty. At 31, she deserved reliability, someone who could prioritize their relationship over legal obligations. The breakthrough came on a Wednesday. New evidence emerged, a previously overlooked security camera that captured crucial moments. The defense motion for mistrial was denied, but it added 3 more days to our sequestration while experts analyzed footage. That night's phone call lasted only 15 minutes before Taylor cut it short. "I should let you rest," she said, but her voice sounded tired, distant. "Taylor, wait. Are we okay?" "Of course. Just stressed about the business. You know how it is." But I didn't know, because I was trapped in a hotel room while her world continued spinning without me. The space between us felt wider than physical distance, complicated by uncertainty and the growing realization that love might not be enough to bridge the gap this situation had created. Hanging up the phone, I stared at my reflection in the lobby window. At 59, I looked every day of my age, exhausted by circumstances beyond my control. Maybe Taylor was discovering that loving an older woman came with complications she hadn't anticipated. The jury reached a verdict after 26 days of sequestration, guilty of second-degree murder. As we filed out of the courthouse, I felt hollow rather than relieved. Weeks of my life, compressed into a single word that would send a man to prison for 25 years. My phone had 17 missed calls from Taylor, but when I called back, it went straight to voicemail. The silence stretched uncomfortably as I drove home through Chandler streets that looked foreign after nearly a month away. My house felt like a museum of someone else's life. Mail piled on the counter, plants wilted despite Taylor's promise to water them. The studio was exactly as I'd left it, half-finished textile pieces hanging like abandoned dreams. Even the air felt stale, lacking the essential oil fragrances that had become synonymous with happiness. Taylor's car wasn't in her driveway when I drove by. Her workshop windows were dark, no sign of life or activity. I sat in my rental car for 20 minutes, gathering courage to knock on her door, but she never appeared. The call came at midnight. Her voice sounded carefully neutral, professionally distant. "Welcome home. How was the verdict?" "Guilty." "Where were you today?" "I tried to reach you." "Client meetings in Phoenix. Essential oil conference ran late. A pause filled with things neither of us wanted to address." "How are you feeling?" "Lost, disconnected, like I've been watching someone else's life for a month." I wanted to ask if she'd missed me, if she still loved me, if we could salvage what we'd built. Instead, I said, "Can we have dinner tomorrow?" "Of course. My place, 7? The response felt obligatory rather than enthusiastic. We were both trying too hard to sound normal, to pretend that weeks of forced separation hadn't created a chasm between us. I spent the next day attempting to reconnect with my own existence. The gallery had postponed our opening indefinitely, our scented textiles, having lost most of their aromatic impact during my absence. Months of collaboration reduced to pretty fabric without the sensory element that had made them special. Taylor's house smelled different when she let me in. Sharper, more medicinal. Her workshop had expanded into the living room, new equipment and unfamiliar oil combinations everywhere. She'd been busy, productive, moving forward while I'd been frozen in legal limbo. Dinner was polite conversation, punctuated by uncomfortable silences. She asked about the trial, I inquired about her work. We discussed the weather, holiday plans, everything except what was really happening between us. "The installation pieces," I finally said over dessert. "Can we salvage them?" "Some of them." The wool held scent better than expected, but the complex blends are gone. She pushed food around her plate without eating. "I've been developing new formulas, stronger base notes that might work better for extended displays." Without consulting me. "You were unreachable, Scarlett." I couldn't put my entire business on hold. Her defensiveness stung, but I understood it. While I'd been sequestered, she'd adapted, evolved, found ways to continue without me. The independence I'd admired in her was now a barrier between us. "I missed you," I said quietly. "I missed you too." But she wouldn't meet my eyes. After dinner, we moved to her couch, the same space where we'd shared so many intimate conversations. Now we sat with careful distance between us, like strangers navigating social expectations. "Taylor, what's happening here?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her words cut deeper than the month of separation. I don't know if I can do this. The uncertainty, the way your life can be disrupted without warning. I spent 26 days wondering if you were okay, if we were okay, if this was worth the stress. And what did you decide? That I'm not ready for this level of complication. I thought I was mature enough to handle loving someone with a completely different life stage, but maybe I was wrong. The admission hung between us like a death sentence. All my fears about our age difference, all the rational arguments against this relationship, crystallizing in her honest confession. So, what are you saying? I don't know. She finally looked at me, blue eyes bright with unshed tears. I just know that these past weeks have been hell, and I'm not sure I'm strong enough to go through it again. I wanted to argue, to promise that jury duty was a freak occurrence that wouldn't repeat. But at 59, I knew better than to make guarantees about circumstances beyond my control. Life was inherently uncertain, and love required accepting that uncertainty together. Maybe you're right, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Maybe this was a mistake from the beginning. Scarlett, no. That's not what I meant. But the damage was done. Her doubts had given voice to mine, and suddenly the brave new world we'd built together felt as fragile as the scented textiles losing their essence in my abandoned studio. I stood to leave, my legs unsteady beneath me. I should go. Please don't leave like this. Can't we talk about it more? What's left to say? You need someone reliable, someone whose life won't interfere with your business or emotional security. I need someone willing to weather complications together. I paused at her door. Neither of us is wrong. We're just wrong for each other. The drive home blurred through tears I refused to acknowledge. Back in my empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of our collaboration, I wondered if loving Taylor had been the bravest thing I'd ever done, or simply the most foolish. 2 weeks of radio silence. I threw myself into salvaging our ruined installation, working 18-hour days in my studio to avoid thinking about Taylor's absence. The textile pieces responded better to retreatment than expected. New oil infusions bringing back some of their original impact. But every successful restoration reminded me of her hands guiding mine. Her laugh when we discovered unexpected color-scent combinations. Even triumph felt hollow without someone to share it with. The gallery called Wednesday morning. A buyer was interested in 3 of our pieces, enough money to make the project financially worthwhile despite everything that had gone wrong. The irony tasted bitter. Success, but at what cost? I was applying the final scent layer to a burgundy wall hanging when footsteps echoed in my studio. My heart stopped, then raced as Taylor appeared in the doorway, looking as exhausted as I felt. Hi. Her voice was tentative, uncertain. Hi. I didn't stop working, couldn't trust myself to look at her directly. How did you know I was here? Your kitchen light was off. This was the only other possibility. She stepped closer, studying the progress I'd made. It looks beautiful. Better than before. Different anyway. She moved through the space like she was relearning it, touching looms and wool samples she'd handled so casually weeks earlier. The careful distance felt worse than anger would have. I've been thinking, she said finally. Dangerous habit. About what you said, about weathering complications together, about whether I'm strong enough for this. I set down my applicator brush, finally facing her fully. She looked smaller somehow, her usual confidence replaced by vulnerability that made my chest ache. And what conclusions did you reach? That I'm a coward. That I let fear make decisions for me instead of love. She took another step closer. That losing you hurts worse than any uncertainty ever could. The words I'd wanted to hear for 2 weeks, but now they felt too late, too convenient. Taylor, you can't just show up here and expect everything to go back to normal. You made your position clear. I was scared. Jury duty made me realize how little control we have over circumstances, and that terrified me. But these past 2 weeks without you have been worse than the month you were sequestered. So what exactly are you proposing? That we try again. That we figure out how to build something strong enough to survive whatever life throws at us. I wanted to say yes, to run into her arms and pretend the past few weeks hadn't happened. But 59 years had taught me that love required more than good intentions. What's different now? What happens when the next crisis hits? When my age becomes inconvenient or my responsibilities interfere with your plans? She was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. I don't know, but I know that running away from problems doesn't solve them. And I know that you're worth fighting for. Am I? Or are you just lonely and familiar feels better than starting over? The accusation was cruel, born from weeks of hurt, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she moved close enough that I could smell her familiar jasmine scent, see the golden flecks in her blue eyes. You're right to question my motives. I've given you every reason to doubt me. Her hand reached toward my face, then stopped inches away. But I love you, Scarlett. Not the easy version of you, not the convenient version. The complicated, challenging, sometimes unavailable version that comes with a full life and real responsibilities. Pretty words. Then, let me show you. Before I could protest, she closed the distance between us, her lips finding mine with desperate intensity. The kiss tasted like apology and promise, months of built connection refusing to be severed by weeks of doubt. When we broke apart, I was breathing hard, my resolve cracking like old paint. This doesn't fix anything. I know. Her forehead rested against mine. But it's a start. Taylor, I can't do this again. The uncertainty, the feeling like I'm too much trouble for you to handle. I won't survive another abandonment. Then don't let me abandon you. Fight with me, not against me. Tell me when I'm being an idiot. Call me on my fears. Make me be brave enough to deserve you. The rawness in her voice broke something loose inside me. This wasn't the confident young woman who'd pursued me at the theater. This was someone who'd learned that love required more than attraction and good intentions. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I don't know how to trust that you won't run when things get difficult again. We'll figure it out together, one crisis at a time, one choice at a time. She stepped back, giving me space to think. But I need you to want to try. I can't carry this alone. Looking at her, seeing the hope and fear warring in her expression, I realized we'd both learned something important during our separation. Love wasn't enough by itself. It required courage, commitment, the willingness to choose each other repeatedly when circumstances made that choice difficult. The gallery opening is next week, I said finally. Our pieces are ready. Our pieces? Unless you want to start over with someone more reliable. Her smile was answer enough. When she kissed me again, it felt like coming home after a long, complicated journey. We still had problems to solve, patterns to change, trust to rebuild. But for the first time in weeks, those challenges felt manageable rather than insurmountable. Stay for dinner? I asked against her lips. I was hoping you'd ask. The week after our reconciliation passed in careful reconstruction, we worked side by side in my studio, repairing both our installation and the trust between us. Taylor was different now, more attentive to my responses, checking in when. Her natural take-charge attitude threatened to overwhelm my input. What do you think about the lighting angle? She asked, adjusting a spotlight on our centerpiece. The question was simple, but the asking mattered. Before, she might have just moved the light and expected me to adapt. Now she recognized that partnership required consultation, not assumption. Lower, I suggested. Let the shadows play across the textile. Together, we found the perfect angle that highlighted both the wool's texture and the subtle scent dispersion points where her oils had been absorbed. 3 days of this careful collaboration reminded me why we worked so well together when we actually worked together. Friday evening, I found myself alone in the studio again, adding final touches to a piece that had been haunting me since the jury duty nightmare. Deep indigo wool interwoven with silver threads, infused with a complex blend Taylor had created specifically for this piece. She called it resilience, layers of bergamot and sandalwood that shifted as viewers moved around the textile. I was so absorbed in the work that I didn't hear her enter. It's beautiful, she said softly from the doorway. It's about us. The admission surprised me with its honesty. About surviving separation and coming back stronger. She moved closer, studying the way light caught the silver threads, how the scent seemed to pulse with the visual rhythm. I can smell the hope in it. Can you smell the fear too? Yes. But the hope is stronger. When she touched my shoulder, I felt the familiar spark that had started everything between us. But now, it was tempered with deeper understanding, the recognition. That attraction was only the foundation, not the entire structure. "Scarlett, I made something for you too." From her bag, she produced a small bottle filled with golden liquid. The scent, when she opened it, was unlike anything she'd created before. Complex, layered, somehow capturing the essence of our entire relationship in a few drops. "What do you call it?" "I don't have a name yet, but it smells like second chances." The fragrance wrapped around us as she stepped into my arms, her body fitting against mine like it belonged there. When she kissed me, I tasted apology and promise, months of built connection refusing to be diminished by our temporary separation. "Come home with me," she whispered against my lips. I thought I was home. Her laugh was soft, intimate. "Then let me take you to bed." The drive to her house felt different than it had weeks ago. Less desperate, more intentional. We'd chosen each other again, eyes open to the complications and committed to navigating them together. Her bedroom was filled with the soft glow of candles she must have lit before coming to find me. The gesture spoke of planning, of hope that we'd end up here, tangled together, and remembering why the difficult work of love was worth the effort. "I missed this," she murmured, her hands finding the buttons of my blouse. "I missed you. Show me." She undressed me with reverent slowness, her touch worshipful as she reacquainted herself with my body. When her lips followed the path her hands had traced, I arched beneath her, months of built tension and weeks of separation crystallizing into desperate need. Text continues with intimate scene described vaguely. We moved together with renewed urgency, bodies remembering their perfect rhythm despite the time apart. Her whispered encouragements, my breathless responses, the way she knew exactly where to touch to make me forget everything except this moment, this connection that had survived doubt and distance. Afterward, we lay entwined in the candlelit darkness, her head on my shoulder as we both caught our breath. The desert night was cool outside her windows, but we generated our own heat, our own sense of safety in the middle of an uncertain world. "The opening is tomorrow," she said eventually. Nervous? Excited, scared, proud of what we've built together. I understood completely. Our first public exhibition as collaborators, but also as a couple. Chandler's art community was small, gossip traveled fast, and there would be questions about our partnership that went beyond the professional. Are you ready for that kind of scrutiny? I'm ready for anything, as long as we face it together. The simple declaration carried weight of hard-earned wisdom. We'd both learned that love without commitment was just attraction, that staying required active choice rather than passive hope. "I love you," I said, needing to voice it clearly. "I love you too. Even when it's complicated, especially when it's complicated." She turned in my arms, her blue eyes serious in the candlelight. "Scarlett, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." My heart rate quickened. "Okay. Do you see a future for us? Not just next week or next month, but years from now. Because I do, and I need to know if that scares you." The question hung between us, heavy with implication. At 59, my future felt more finite than hers. In 20 years, I'd be nearly 80, while she'd still be in her prime. The mathematics of aging felt cruel and unforgiving. "Yes," I said finally. "And yes, it scares me." The age difference? Everything. The possibility of illness, of becoming a burden, of you waking up one day and realizing you tied yourself to someone whose best years are behind her. Taylor was quiet for a long moment, her fingertips tracing patterns on my skin. "You know what scares me?" "What?" "Wasting whatever time we have together worrying about time we might not have. Life doesn't come with guarantees, Scarlett. David was younger than you are now when he died." The reference to my late husband was gentle but pointed. She was right. Security was an illusion. Safety a temporary condition at best. So what do? We choose each other. Every day, for as long as we're both choosing. We build something beautiful and strong, and we trust it to survive whatever comes. When she kissed me this time, it felt like sealing a covenant, rather than just expressing affection. Tomorrow we'd face the art community together. Next week, we'd navigate whatever new challenges arose. The future remained uncertain, but we'd face it as partners rather than individuals hoping for the best. The gallery opening arrived with perfect desert weather, clear skies, and temperatures that drew crowds to downtown Chandler's art district. Our installation occupied the main wall, 12 textile pieces arranged in a flowing narrative that told the story of love through scent and texture. Standing before our work, I felt the familiar flutter of pre-show nerves mixed with pride. Each piece represented months of collaboration, failed experiments transformed into artistic breakthroughs, our personal journey woven literally into wool and fragrance. Ready? Taylor appeared beside me, elegant in a black dress that complemented her blonde hair. She'd chosen a subtle lavender scent for tonight, something calming that wouldn't compete with our exhibition. As ready as I'll ever be. The first guests arrived promptly at 6. Janet Hoffman from my neighborhood walked directly to our centerpiece, the indigo resilience piece that had become my favorite. Her expression shifted from polite interest to genuine surprise as she caught the scent profile. "Scarlett, this is extraordinary. I had no idea you were working with aromatherapy. Taylor is the scent designer. I just provide the canvas." But Taylor stepped closer, her hand finding mine naturally. "We're partners, equal collaborators." The simple declaration felt revolutionary in our conservative suburb. Two women, holding hands in public, claiming professional and personal partnership without apology or explanation. More guests arrived throughout the evening. Art collectors, local artists, curiosity seekers drawn by word of mouth about the unique sensory experience we'd created. The responses were overwhelmingly positive, viewers spending longer than usual, with each piece as they absorbed both visual and olfactory elements. "This changes everything about textile art," declared Marcus Chen, the gallery director. "Have you considered a traveling exhibition?" The suggestion was flattering and terrifying. Success meant exposure, opportunities, validation of our collaborative vision. But it also meant public scrutiny of our relationship, questions about how a 59-year-old textile artist and 31-year-old aromatherapist had found each other. "We'll consider it," I said diplomatically. "Definitely consider it," Taylor added with characteristic confidence. By 8 o'clock, 3 pieces had sold, including the resilience installation, that had captured my emotional journey through our separation and reunion. The buyers were a young couple from Phoenix who understood the significance of art that engaged multiple senses. "They'll take good care of it," Taylor whispered as we watched the couple examine their purchase. "How can you tell?" "The way they're breathing it in. They get that it's not just decoration." During a quiet moment between visitors, we found ourselves alone with our art. The gallery lighting created dramatic shadows across the textiles, while subtle air circulation carried the various scents throughout the space. It was everything we'd envisioned during those early brainstorming sessions in my studio. "No regrets?" Taylor asked, studying my profile as I watched strangers interact with our work. "Only that it took us this long to get here." She squeezed my hand, her engagement ring catching gallery lights. We'd chosen matching simple bands the week before, not quite ready for formal marriage, but committed to public declaration of our partnership. The rings felt natural now, visible symbols of choice rather than obligation. The evening wound down with promises from gallery contacts and requests for commission work. Our experiment in collaborative art had exceeded every expectation, opening doors neither of us could have walked through alone. "Celebration dinner?" Taylor suggested as we helped pack the remaining pieces. "My place. I'll cook." "You hate cooking." "I'm learning to love it." The drive home felt different than our usual routes through Chandler's suburban streets. Tonight we were returning as recognized artists, successful partners, women who'd built something meaningful together. The familiar landscape looked more welcoming, less likely to judge our unconventional love story. At home, we prepared a simple meal together, moving around my kitchen with the easy coordination that had developed over months of shared mornings. Taylor opened wine while I grilled vegetables, our conversation flowing between practical logistics and dreams for future projects. "The traveling exhibition could work," she said, settling beside me on the patio with our plates. "My business is mostly online now anyway. Mobile aromatherapy workshops. You'd really want to travel together? Deal with logistics and hotels and constant togetherness?" "Especially the constant togetherness." Her smile was infectious, full of possibilities I was still learning to embrace. At 59, I'd expected my adventures to be behind me. Taylor had taught me that the best chapters might still be unwritten. After dinner, we walked through my neighborhood, hand in hand, no longer concerned about curious neighbors or whispered speculation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them as partners rather than individuals hoping for understanding. 1 year ago, did you ever imagine this? Taylor asked, gesturing at the desert landscape around us, at the life we'd built together. Never. I thought I was done with surprises. Good surprises or bad surprises? All surprises. I thought safe was better than sorry. And now? I considered the question seriously, remembering the woman I'd been before that night at the community theater. Careful, controlled, living small to avoid disappointment. That version of me could never have imagined standing here with Taylor. Planning exhibitions and adventures, choosing risk over security. Now I think sorry would have been the real tragedy. She stopped walking, turning to face me in the streetlight's glow. I love you, Scarlett Reed. I love you too, Taylor Barnes. Even when you make my life complicated. Especially when I make your life complicated. When she kissed me this time, it tasted like everything we'd built, and everything we had yet to discover. The desert stars watched over us, witnesses to love that had survived doubt, distance, and the small-minded fears that keep most people safely, sadly alone. 1 year later, our traveling exhibition would open in Santa Fe to critical acclaim. But tonight, walking home through quiet Chandler streets, we were just two women who found each other against all odds and chosen to build something beautiful together. The best chapters, it turned out, were just beginning.